An accountant at H&R Block scoffed at her dream. Find out what my client Leslie has to say to that guy now. Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of Profitable Joyful Consulting, and this season we're talking about expansion. We can't even talk about expanding a business unless we're willing to expand as people. You have to really dig in and do the work. In this episode, Leslie is going to talk about the reasons that she sought out a consultant to help her with her business, the kinds of things that we worked on, and the kinds of amazing results that she gets for her clients. I think you're going to be really excited by her unique industry and to hear some of the dynamics that go on there. And also, you'll notice the similarities that she has as another woman coming out of a corporate environment and striking out on her own, and what's happened for her in the past year that we've worked together. Leslie, would you share a little bit about your journey from corporate to starting your own business?
Sure. I worked in corporate for 15 years in visual merchandising across 3 different organizations. And I found that during my time at those companies, there was a lot of downtime and a lot of opportunity, I thought, to offer the services that I was providing in-house to clients on a more freelance or a la carte basis. So I tried it once and I just didn't have the resources or the context at that point. And I went back to another organization in-house, and then finally sort of all the stars aligned and I got a great opportunity to work with a client, and it really grew from there. But I would say that I had the vision as early back as like my first job when I was in my like mid-20s. So
Amazing.
Yeah.
What were some of the really great things that you took away from your time at corporate?
Oh my gosh, so many. I think that I learned the business that I'm in. So I'm primarily in the fashion sector. I learned really all about the different roles within organizations and how all of those roles inform each other. And it's really important to understand both the dynamic and the business needs. And I think that I learned a lot about leadership. I was in leadership roles. I learned a lot about training, which has become really, really helpful for me, and like how to motivate teams. And I think working in larger organizations, you have the opportunity to obviously work with bigger teams and learn so much. So yeah, super grateful for that time.
And then was there something that kind of pushed you out of corporate, or did you just feel like it was time to do your own thing?
I definitely was the type of person that was always meant to work for myself. I would get frustrated with the bureaucracy and the roadblocks that naturally come with such a large company. So I think that for me, I really believe in efficiency, and I personally work really quickly, just having the experience that I have now. So yeah, I think I was just like, I kind of felt like my time had come, and I was at the place where I had gathered all the information that I needed to gather. And yeah, it just felt right.
Yeah, but it's still a leap of faith and a big risk to go out on your own.
Yeah.
So how was that the first year?
Yeah, no, it's scary. It's definitely scary. I think something for myself that like friends and family will say is I definitely have faith in myself and my skills. And I kind of had the attitude of like, why can't I? So it's extremely scary and stressful because you don't have that paycheck coming in every week. You don't necessarily have the health benefits that you have. There's all like the specifics that you're releasing, but I don't know. I just was like also really excited, and I believed in what I was trying to start as something that could really work. So probably if you asked me then, I would be like, it was absolutely horrible and scary. But now looking back, I think it was both scary and really exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. Where did your first clients come from?
So all of my clients came from referrals. And honestly, aside from a handful, that's still the way that I get my clients. So obviously, having worked at several different organizations, I made so many connections over the years. So my first client came through a previous colleague of mine.
That's great. It's great. So
Yeah.
it's just speaks to kind of like not burning your bridges and like really having good context. So the industry you're in, fashion, is fairly like, how might you describe it so that I don't?
For me, my role in the industry is more on the creative side. And I think that I find that I work with the same types of people and organizations over and over, which is a great blessing because I find that I can navigate better as time goes on. But yeah, I don't know. It's tricky to explain the industry, right, to somebody who's not in it. But I think it's really dynamic. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of expectation. It's just the way that the industry works. It moves really quickly. So I think that's kind of what sticks out when I think of explaining it.
Sure. And big personalities, creative people, or sometimes kind of, let's say, excitable, emotional.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And, having like the experience of working with a lot of the founders of these companies, it's really, really inspiring because you're working with the person who really has the vision, right?
Yeah.
So that person is often very, very dedicated, rightfully so, and involved. Yeah, working with people that are like highly committed and definitely have an expectation of excellence.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do through like a case study of one of your clients. So can you tell us about someone that you worked with and like what were things like in the beginning and then some of the things that you did for them in the processes that you use and the tools or your craft, and then like what things are like for them now as a result of that?
Yeah, definitely. So first, I think when I joined, and I'll use a new client example, I joined into an organization consulting on visual merchandising, and visual merchandising is anything that you see, feel, or experience in a store. So any of the product, anything from the lighting to the displays to anything that entices you to make a purchase in the store. And that's what we really focus on. And obviously for the client, that means higher sales if it's done correctly. So I think a lot of times, and with this latest client, I'm brought in to kind of strategize and assess like what the visual merchandising plan has been to date and seeing where we can make tweaks or edits to change that really. Because I think a big thing about what I do is coming in with a fresh set of eyes. I think it's really helpful to have a consultant or someone outside of the organization who works with other people because you really have like a fresh take and you have the resources and the library of other experiences where you can say, oh, in this case, I've done this and just offer a lot of options. So I'll come in, I'll strategize with the client, we'll figure out what plan works for them. And then there's like a trial period where we'll implement some of these changes in the stores and we'll map out and we'll look at how did those changes actually affect sales and also the emotional side, like how are customers responding and what is the overall feeling in the store. Sometimes it's like great off the bat and other times it's like, okay, this was great and let's tweak this. And we really look at that in an analytical way. So it's both the creative side where like the goal is that it looks beautiful, but it's also, and what's really important to me in my business is like not just stopping there, but looking at, okay, it looks beautiful. And now what were the sales, right?
Yeah.
Like what did these changes actually impact in the business? And then afterwards, after that process, we have a new roadmap of how we can work through different strategies depending on the collection or the season to ensure that the store is set up in a way that is both visually appealing and the client is seeing an ROI on that investment.
Awesome. So this current client, where are you in that process?
We are in the process of the implementation phase. So we are actually putting into practice what we have strategized about and come up with. And in some organizations, and this one in particular, we're working sort of against a set of standards that were already in place and looking at like, yes, this is what you've always done, but maybe there's a world in which we do something different and let's just try it. I think that's a big thing. I think it's easy, even for myself, to get stuck in my ways of doing things in one particular way. So, kind of building that trust, the client feels ready to take that step, making these changes, and then we'll move on to reviewing and
measuring,
seeing how it goes. Yeah, measuring.
What are some of the surprising things that you have done that have worked or not worked?
I think a lot of times I can tend to be like, I'm the face of my business and then there's a team behind me. Like, I really want to say like, yes, yes, yes to the client and just say like, sure, whatever, you feel is right. And I think there's been points where I've actually said like, I disagree with this and I think we should do this. And that surprised me because I think a lot of times like trusting my gut and just trusting the knowledge that I have and having done this for so many years that it can tend to pan out. But it's also a risk because you want to make sure that you're bringing in new ideas, and at the same time, really honoring what existed before.
Definitely. Definitely. And what's the most exhilarating part of your work?
Well, you would never believe this, but I really enjoy pitching and discussing new client engagements, which when we first started working together was really, really challenging for me because as a creative person, as someone who can lean on the side of being more vague when it comes to certain things like financial conversations, like I was so terrified, right? To say like, this is what I'm worth and this is what this will look like and being really definitive. And now I find that that's really rewarding for myself and also for the client, right? To just be super direct and to the point. And it's beneficial for both of us.
It is a surprise to hear you say that because it's such a journey. So why don't we go back to the very beginning? You found me through my podcast. So what were you looking for and what were you hoping to find in a consultant?
I had taken my business to a certain point, and I was finding that although there was some growth from year to year, which is a blessing, not every business can grow year after year. But in a service-based business, I was like, there should be, like, I know I can take this further, but I don't actually know how. So I was looking for someone to come in, to look at everything I've been doing, to look at the ways that I've been getting new clients, engaging those clients, building out my team, really having that foundation set up. And I was just like, I really felt in my gut, like I can keep going where I am now, but I don't see that I can really take it to the next level. And because I want to, I was like, I need help and I need somebody that knows how to do this because I can't do everything. And as hard as that is for me to accept, I'm getting better. Like there are people that can really be a huge, huge resource and take things to the other level. So that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Why do you feel like that was hard for you? Because I find you to be incredibly capable. And I think a lot of women consultants are that, like they're used to doing everything on their own. So how did you realize that that was a limit for you?
I remember I reached out to you towards the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023. So I was basically reviewing my previous year and I was comparing it to the year prior. And I was looking at like, what had changed, what had grown, what sort of projects had dropped off or grown further. And it was then that I thought, okay, I actually don't have any new ideas of how to keep moving forward. And that's when I was like, I think it's time to invest in someone to come in and help me with that.
And that's amazing because you're an idea person.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing for your clients. And I think it's realizing that's, I mean, I completely understand that. When you're looking at your own thing and you feel like I've hit the end of what I'm able to do. If you hadn't worked with me, did you have other ideas about how you would grow the business?
Honestly, no. I knew that I'm somebody that like, I will definitely outsource when I feel like it is out of my bounds, right? Like I'm not scared to admit that or do that. And yeah, like even just the particulars of how we sort of looked at the year and how we restructured everything. Like I just always say, like, I never would have thought of that. I just wouldn't have. So you're absolutely right. I think of ideas all the time for clients. I am constantly in conversation with people. I'm constantly having to come up with a solution to some sort of problem or challenge. So I was like, I can't also do that in growing the business. I just knew it.
Yeah. So you talked about how we structured the year together. What was it like to begin this work and to look at your business in this new way?
Well, as you know, at the beginning, I was extremely stressed. I'm the type of person who works really quickly. I like really quick results. I like to do things sometimes a little bit impulsively. Like I saw your podcast, I listened, I was like, got it. This person knows what I need. And I just like was ready to go. Like I really don't delay when it comes to something that I want. So I made the decision quickly and then we started the work and we started to look at everything and it was hard. It's really hard work because it's so personal, right? Like I built this whole thing by myself and now someone's looking and saying, "Oh, what about this or this?" And I think it's vulnerable in a sense to open up in that way to someone and show them everything. So it's really hard. It was tricky at the beginning and it was also really scary because then it was like, now I have to go do these hard things and talk to clients and have conversations and really step into what I believe the value is and stand firm in that. And that's always challenging for me personally.
Well, I think it's challenging for anyone. And you really jumped into the deep end. The theme for this season of the podcast is expansion. And I think there is a pace towards expansion that is maybe in someone's comfort zone. And you, I think, share my pace, which is as fast as possible. And like
Yeah.
the bigger the expansion, the better. And also, do you mind sharing a little bit of what particular things in the beginning you were working on and how that felt for you?
I had kicked off 4 years prior with my business, and I remember meeting with an accountant who like I shared a little bit about like what my hopes were. And he was like, sort of like, yeah, right, kind of thing. And I think about him a lot because I was like, okay. And
Yeah.
now it's like beyond that, like
Really?
5 times over.
I'm sorry, I just have to stop you on that. So you really had a male accountant kind of put a box around what he thought your limits were
Yeah, totally.
and kind of sneer at your dreams?
Yeah, at H&R Block, as a matter of fact. I was like, okay, this isn't going to be the relationship for me. But
Yeah.
yes, totally. Okay, so I started the business 4 years ago. I had never reevaluated. I had never looked at my pricing structure. I had never looked at working with clients in a more formatted way. There was a lot of like handshake agreements. There was actually no contracts. There was actually nothing signed. And it was like, I felt really comfortable in that because I think when you're not doing that, there's a level of you saying to yourself, oh, this isn't that serious. And like, oh, it's fine. Or like, it's just a small thing. And it's like, yeah, maybe it was then, but like, if I want it to grow, that's like, okay too, right? Like believing in that. So we really started to work on everything from like the very baseline of what do my contracts look like? What are these engagements? What's my offer? Like when you asked me that, I was like, what's an offer? Like I just had a basic rate sheet. And now from working with me, like I have so many ideas. And when we started to work through like these different agreements together that I could go out and show clients, like it really made sense. But again, like I was not in a place where I could have come to that. So we started on the basics, really.
The fundamentals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had to go and implement some of those fundamentals where it's a little more challenging. Yeah. The people piece of that. So sometimes people that you're working with are not as excited to hear about the changes that you're making as you are to be expanding in your business.
Yeah. Something I thought about a lot was like, I work with a lot of female founders and I work with a lot of people who also expanded their businesses, right? Like, and I had this idea that it was somehow personal because I think something about me is like, I'm told by my clients that like, I'm very warm and like, maybe I'm even comforting. Those are the kind of words I think that would be used to describe me. So when you're talked about in that way, there's this idea that if you're like, actually, I'm going to increase my prices because it's been 5 years and, even just like, cost of living has changed. Something as simple as that. Like I felt in some way that was personal, right? And that would make me mean or less desirable to work with or any number of things when I had to really be like, no, but everyone does. This is not a personal matter. Like this is business. And that was something that I needed support in, not just learning and understanding, but definitely in implementing. Cause I mean, I would call you and I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to do this. Like, I know these people so well now. I'm so blessed that my clients, most of them have been with me for many, many years. So it felt scary for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You also had so many moments this year where you got to experience yourself in power. The powerful ways that you could show up. One that comes to mind was demanding that the decision maker actually be in the room. So what was that like to transition from, I can't really ask for this, to like having them respond? And that was, by the way, a big company.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a really good moment to reference and a really good look at sort of our year together as a whole. Like those small moments really add up. And I think you said that to me, right? Like if I'm the founder of my company and I'm on the call, I need to be talking to someone of equal rank that can really make a decision, right? That's not just going to say, oh, we'll get back to you, or well, we got to bring it up to here, because I need to be able to speak to what I'm offering, what I'm asking for this project. So in that case, I remember that very well. It was a very big organization, probably the biggest that I work with. And I said through email, like, let's have a call. And then the person who was more on the junior side, who was managing the communication, said, sure, we'll jump on together. And I just asked, hey, can the people, the budget holders also join this so we can just get it it was a very tight timeline as most of my projects are. So I was like, in order to be as productive as we can, let's have everybody join. And I remember she said, yep, no problem. And that morning, like more people started joining the meeting, like more and more. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? So I think it ended up being like 10 of us after it was going to be 2 of us. And I was so nervous. I was like shaking because, okay, what is that saying? And that's telling them like I really take myself seriously and I am not wasting time and I'm a real business, right? And like that is all true. And to ask for that and assert that also feels so scary when you haven't done it. And the call was just to review a scope of work agreement. It was a 15-minute call, which is all I requested. I was done sharing everything at like minute 12. They had a few questions and it went perfect. And I remember some of the teammates saying after, who I worked with on the project, that they were really impressed with that was really helpful. And that was cool to hear too, right? Because to me, it's so much more comfortable for me to just stay sort of in my comfort zone. But it was so cool. That was a really good moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had several of those throughout the year. I mean, what's another moment that comes to mind when you really stepped outside your comfort zone and made something happen that maybe you didn't expect or was really hard for you?
So we put together a new offering. So what that means is like a full scope of work agreement that outlines everything that we will work on together for whatever period of time. So it might be 6 months, it might be a year, it might be a 3-month trial, whatever feels right in the situation. So I had that ready to go. And the first time that I went out to actually sell that to someone, I was completely terrified. One, it was just a new way of working. Something that I do now is I actually have the conversation per your advice. So I have the conversation on a call, a video call in person if possible, where we're going through it together and I can really take the client through. And what that does is it helps to answer questions really quickly. And I think the first time I did that, I was probably my most nervous, which makes sense. But what came out of that was wonderful because it was well received. It was both, I would say, fair and I know this sounds silly, but it like made sense, right? I think for my work where it can be creative, it's sometimes hard for a client or even people on Instagram, like, wait, what do you do? So it like really breaks it down exactly what we're going to do, exactly what the client's going to come away with. And now that's easy, right? Now that particular type of engagement is easy for me to speak to.
Yeah. Well, yay. And that's exhilarating.
Yeah, totally.
The tendency is to write up a proposal and then send it in the mail. And I always joke that then the consultant kind of like runs around the corner and like puts their fingers in their ears and waits for the bomb to go off because we're like, oh my God, when they see the price. But you want to be there with them when they do see the price so that you can, and you mentioned like they had questions that would have been a back and forth email exchange for like days and days and days instead of just being able to just kind of like resolve everything in one go.
Right. Exactly. And I think that as scary as it was then, right, to get on the call and go through that, it's a lot less scary. And I do it now with every new engagement. So we always get on the call, we always review. And a lot of times they'll say like, oh, can we remove this? Let's add this. Like, oh, we also need this. And then it feels like we're coming to an agreement that really suits both of us, which is just a really nice way to start a relationship too.
For sure. For sure. So it was scary before because it was unfamiliar, or was there something else about it?
Unfamiliar. And I think also it's like working through whatever ideas you have about yourself that you need to like reframe or reset. Like, why do I think that I deserve this? You know, this kind of thinking that I don't think men struggle with. I don't know if other women will relate or not, but I know for me particularly, it was sort of like, I had to like really be honest with myself that like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that for 5 years, everything has cost the same. And we've never had a conversation and I've never gone to any clients and I've never like, so what is that? Your business is just the same forever, right? If you take that approach and like, that's not what businesses do.
Right.
Yeah, it was new, which is scary. And then it was just like, yeah, definitely rethinking about myself and my self-worth and my value and how I feel about myself going into these conversations and all of that.
And speaking up after 5 years is like for the people on the other side, it's like, what now? Why now? Like,
Right.
what's this
Right.
about? So it is kind of a big thing all around. And like, oh, suddenly somebody got self-esteem. Okay. But that's like, this is the way this goes. Right.
Yeah. Totally.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Which particular aspects of our work together have made the biggest difference for you?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, I think like what we're really talking about and why I'm so focused on it in the fundamentals is like if another consultant is listening to this and they're having similar problems or challenges that I was having, which are you got yourself to a point and now what kind of feeling, like I think that the biggest difference has been someone else that, I mean, I can text you with questions and we have our calls, and just having a partner in it who can help you reset, look at everything from the ground up and figure out what the planning is. And I also think for me, like having accountability, like building out case studies or working on different parts of my business that I wouldn't have even thought about working on. Because I think when it's just you and you're in it alone, it's nearly impossible to have a bird's eye view.
For sure. So of the tools that we've done so far, which ones kind of stand out to you?
I think number one is identifying what is it that I'm offering, right? What is my offer? Getting a really clear and concise offer that I can use for any new relationship, any client. So that's number one. So I'm like confident. I know what my services are. I know how I can bucket things. The fact that I didn't have that now looking back is kind of alarming. Like everything was just sort of like, here's a rate sheet and like, sure. Yeah. And I think now the biggest thing is like my clients and I sign on to longer engagement. So what that means is there's actually a really clean and clear schedule that goes off our agreement that highlights everything we'll do. There's a timeline. And as a creative person myself, I think it's so comfortable to live like in the gray and be vague and, oh, no problem. And this and that. And this really offers a super, super buttoned up version of what I was already doing in a way that makes sense. So number one is that. The fact that I have that now and didn't is like so transformative. And then number two is like the people side. How am I going to build out my team? How am I going to be a leader? What do I actually want my business to look like? So all of that and like how I'm navigating personally through all these changes, because when you start working on your business, it's like, it's the same as any other relationship, right? And it's challenging and doubts and fears and all these things come in. So it's like working on that part, I think is as important, and building in that confidence and self-esteem and having your own idea of your value is super important.
I just want to clarify real quick. When you say rate card, so before how you were working was you had like a day rate, or it was kind of like a per item rate. So kind of like a menu of services that they could choose from.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like what I like to say, which is a la carte, which is true, right? Like I offer any number of services and we can work through that in a way that fits the client's needs. But what I was doing was I was leaving it up to the client to decide what they wanted, right? Versus saying like, hey, I actually know based on what I've done with all of these other brands that this is how we should work. And this is what I propose to you. And here's how I think it should operate. And like, if it's not within your budget, no problem. We'll remove things or we'll figure it out. But I'm setting the tone as the consultant coming in the same way you did with my business and saying like, hey, this is what I see. And here's how I think it should go. Yeah. So it was very just like, here's the rate card, choose or don't choose. And you can text me at any time and I'll come. And now it's like, there's a schedule. Yeah. There's a plan, and everyone's time's important. And I think in fashion too, right? There's so many last minute demands and jobs, and that will still remain. And that's part of it. But like, how within that can we be as organized and structured as possible on both sides?
Awesome. Awesome. So what has been the biggest result of this year together? I mean, we're coming up on a year.
I know.
What are the biggest results?
Biggest results are financially, I have grown my business, right? So like I've gotten more work. I have a full-time employee, which I didn't have. And I have a lot of really talented contractors that work with me on project to project basis, or like for a particular client that's a good fit. So I've been able to grow my business enough to afford to have that, right? So like that's how the business grows. I mean, I can't do everything and grow the business. So that's also huge. So I think number one, that I did see the return on the investment I made in our work together. And I've really shown up for that work, as you can attest, and you have too. And I think that's so important. Like, I felt that from you 100%, like just complete support. So that's been completely so valuable to me, truly. And so that, right, there's the money stuff, but then there's like the, how do I feel as I'm making these decisions and changes? And that's equally as important to me.
Yeah.
And I know for you, like, it's about joyful scaling, right? So it's not about, I have no life outside of my work, which I still need to work on, which is my own personal, my own personal problem. And I think it will come as things as, you know, this was a year that I really was like, I'm going to fully commit to this, and we're going to like do this and see, you know, build. But yeah, having the support on the more emotional side, or like the spiritual side, or the personal side while this is happening is so valuable. Cause I think I personally need to show up in these situations with my clients in a way that I feel is inspiring and enjoyable. I mean, there's nothing worse than being around someone that you know, you can feel the energy is off, right? So it's like, I need to be right in myself and feel good about the decisions I'm making as I'm scaling, in order to show up and continue to offer the service, which I do, which, like, there is that personal touch, and there's that feeling of the client feeling taken care of. And that's so important to me. I mean, like I said at the beginning, my business is very referral based, and that comes from like the reputation. I mean, I was able to start my business through a referral of someone, of a company I previously left. Like, I didn't burn bridges. I don't burn bridges. And I don't really think that there's a need to. Sometimes like you part ways and it makes sense, but
yeah,
that's really important too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. In terms of revenue growth, would you be comfortable saying a multiple, like doubled, more than doubled?
Yeah, I think doubled. We're still seeing the numbers come in, but I'm also looking ahead, right? There's some things I waited on strategically. So like, also looking at 2024, I would say even more than doubled.
Hooray. Hooray. You've just sold in the first one that's a year. So potentially the biggest single engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was that like?
I mean, it's great. I think you had asked me when we were chatting prior, like, did I celebrate? And something that I'm working on is celebrating more. I'm very much like a perfectionist in that, and I'm working on this, right? Where it's like, okay, but what's next? What's next? What's next? Right. And like, you know, that from working with me. So it's like, it's wonderful, and I'm proud of myself. And it was very hard to do. It was very scary to do this particular one. So yeah, super grateful, and just want to stop and like appreciate that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I want you to stop and appreciate that.
I know
it's years of what you built for you to come away from that with a win. It's a higher number than you took in. So that's a good thing. You know, that was a lot of negotiating and really standing in your power.
Yeah, totally. And also, I spoke of like the personal side, and like a lot of these clients I've known for years and years. So like doing what other people do, right? Which is like, this isn't personal, and here's the new way that things are going to go. And that's super scary, because I definitely enjoy my clients to have a positive feeling about me and to not be upset. And like, it's like really depersonalizing all of that. Is important.
For sure. And you get to look at this engagement and see this is work coming in for the foreseeable future. So it concretizes, and I think it creates, that's what a transformational engagement does, is it creates this sense of safety in this relationship. I mean, you know, anything can happen in the world, but basically as we intend it right now, that's going to be a collaboration for the next year. And I think that's a nice thing to nail down.
It is a nice thing to nail down, and it gives both me and the client a really clear understanding from the beginning of the year. And like in my industry, calendars are really tricky at certain times of year. Everybody is working at the same time, very concentrated during Fashion Week and different points. So it's like, I think a big thing for me, and it might not apply to every industry, but is like making sure that my company is actually able to do everything for everyone when they all want it at the same time. And these kind of engagements allow for us to plan for that. And that's really key. for both sides. So I'm super grateful. And it's been like that final engagement really like it's a perfect way to wrap up our year together too, right? Where it's like, I've been working towards this. And I don't know that if I'd gone to do this at the beginning of our work together, if I would have felt it, right, authentically, like, and been able to stand in that.
Definitely. It does feel like the thing that towards which you grew and the thing, that we've been preparing for all this time. So it's wonderful. It seems also like maybe it just feels a little bit unreal after all this time.
Totally.
Maybe
Absolutely.
that's why it's hard to celebrate, because it's like, really? Seriously?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Definitely. There's definitely that for sure.
Yeah. Well, good. Let's have a celebration that actually brings it into being and concretizes it and makes it real on earth. Let's ground it. So if you were to share your top 3 takeaways, we always end with takeaways. So if you were to share your top 3 takeaways from this year together, what would they be?
Takeaway number 1 would be working on the foundation. I feel like after this year, I can feel really confident in my offer, what my pricing structure looks like, and can be confident in that, like when I've brought that to clients, that it's worked. So that's number 1. And I think that's super important. Number 2 is having had the support over this year in our work together. So that means anything from our weekly meetings to text to sometimes late phone calls, right? To like really get me through those really tricky times has been so valuable. And I mentioned that before, but I want to say it again for anyone who is curious about this kind of relationship. I think that that's something that for me, I really needed. It's kind of like a therapist for your business for me. Like it's just like someone who's there, right? Somebody who's also really dedicated to like seeing the growth and like being a partner in that. So I think that's number 2. And number 3, I think is like joy. Like I'm actually excited now about the future. And like I said, and I think something that I'll work towards is like more balance. That's a personal goal, but like joy that now that I have this foundation squared away, that I'm really excited because I do believe like the sky's the limit. And I think there's so much potential as we continue our relationship working on this stuff. I just feel going into last year before we started working together, like there was a little dread, like, oh, what's going to come in? And I'm on the revenue roller coaster and like, are we going to be okay? And now I have this full-time employee. And like, now it's like, I have a sense of security, which allows me to be joyful in the future. And that's huge.
It is huge. It is huge. And you're right. I mean, I think the vision that you have for the business is eminently doable. And I love that that we get to show Mr. H&R Block how wrong he was.
I know. I'm going to send
how small his ideas are. Yeah, you should totally send it to him. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, I've had such a fantastic time working with you this year because you are such an implementer and because you do really get things done. And I think one of the things that I have been personally inspired by about you, Leslie, is that even though you have been like really nervous and that you do take things very emotionally and you are passionate about your work and it has been hard, but you've been so courageous and done things anyway. And it's like, even if we have to do a phone call 5 minutes before and you're terrified, you still do it. And then 99 times out of 100, it goes exactly your way or better. Like it's been amazing. You're so gifted that things work out for you. And people buy from you and you're confident in your work, which I think is also such an important thing. Like the thing you don't lack confidence around is that your work is amazing. And I think that's going to be the thing that really grows your business most.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. I feel really blessed and grateful. I think it's a risk. Like it was a risk starting my business. It's a risk to work with somebody that you don't know. Right.
Yeah,
and like
totally.
Just to invest that in yourself, right? Like I'm so used to selling out, but like to be like, okay, I'm going to invest in this. For me, it's a risk as well. But I think like I believe in taking those risks. Definitely paid off. So thank you.
Thanks for watching. I hope you are as inspired as I am by listening to this interview with Leslie. You know, she did a lot of hard things, and you can do hard things when you have the right support around you. So if you're looking to expand your business and to grow this year dramatically, then I invite you to reach out and let's have a conversation about how I might support you to do that. You can find information about how to work with me, samanthahartley.com/super. There's a way to book a 12-minute clarity call with me, and I would love to hear from you. With that, I'm wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business.